Yeah.
So first question, right? So there are other climate organizations out there. There are climate activists. The Wet and Wild. Um, we have Singapore Youth for Climate Action. So how exactly does your organization differ from others, if at all?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to kick us off, and I will say, all of those cool people and groups you've named, Turin, SYCA, we are big fans and also friends. So it's really all about working together and knowing where our individual also areas of focus are to complement them. I would say one big kind of defining characteristic of the work that SG Climate Rally does is our keen focus on climate justice. We've been talking a lot about climate justice in the past 2 or 3 years. What does that mean? It means, beyond talking about the technical solutions of transitioning away from fossil fuels, moving into renewable energy, protecting biodiversity more. What we are interested in as a movement is how we are doing this through the lens of justice and equity, how we are creating or pushing for climate solutions with a mind for fairness, right? With a very keen understanding of who is disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis, who is more responsible for the climate crisis and needs to be doing more, and what our responsibilities are to the most vulnerable. We have worked on these issues in a variety of ways, whether it was the petrol tax hike back in 2021. I think people did not expect to see environmentalists come out and say like, hey, actually we are not pro this new petrol tax hike because it disproportionately places the burden of transitioning into a greener economy on workers and on individuals who were the least responsible for the crisis. Another, I think, just off the top of my head, something I've been thinking about is a new I think URA-HDB has talked about creating a Long Island along the Singapore East Coast line, and part of this Long Island, aside from helping address housing needs, would be to address the problem of rising sea levels. But what we would then be interested in as a rally is where is that sand coming from and at what cost to be reclaiming this massive new piece of Long Island, right? And are we degrading and destroying Southeast Asian riverine communities in buying this sand to build this Long Island to protect Singapore from rising levels? So that's kind of what we mean when we say we're climate justice focused. I think the other big kind of dimension that makes our work a bit different than other climate, I would say, is our focus on systemic change. One of our fundamental premises as a movement is that lifestyle change is not enough, right? Like it is good and important to, be recycling, be reducing your waste, be eating a more plant-based diet to reduce your food emissions, but that alone is not enough, because if you look at the kind of amount of emissions that individual households are putting out as a proportion of Singapore's national emissions, is like nothing compared to what corporations and manufacturing and our petrochemical sector is responsible for, right? So what our call is that in order to shift the needle on the climate crisis, we need to be asking for systems change. Which is of course not to say that individual lifestyle changes are not important, and I think I speak for many in the movement that like many of us do these things, I eat plant-based, I haven't bought new clothes in like years, only shop secondhand, but that is not our focus, right? Our focus is on what systems change can meaningfully look like to actually shift the needle. Yeah, Debbie, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Helen.
Yeah, add a bit. We also want to tell people that and really have the recognition from the wider public that climate change is a global problem, and recognize that what we do on our Singaporean shores may actually have impacts on other countries in the region, as a financial hub, as an aviation hub, as a shipping hub, and also homes to one of the largest oil refineries in the world. In fact, we are like the 8th largest exporter of chemicals in 2019, ranked by World Trade Statistical Review, and this is like on the EDB website. So Singapore, even though we are so small, we actually have we have an outsized impact. And we also have an outsized capacity to help those in the region adapt and, manage climate change. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think besides that, if I can add on one more
Yeah.
point, is that we are very politically focused as a group. So we want to engage Singaporeans as active political citizens. And some of the
Oh,
initiatives that we have tried to do this by is, for instance, postcards to my MP that we are doing again in this year's rally. We had this movement during GE 2020 called Green Watch, where we organized people in their neighborhoods. We connected people and basically gave them the platform to discuss their various parties like green plans. And we also had like a SG Green Plan tracker. So on that note, though, I must say that we used to be more focused on communicating like the climate science, but as the understanding of climate science amongst the Singaporean public has improved a lot over the years, I think we are also very grateful that climate deniers in Singapore are few and far between. We are now focusing more on communicating the impact side of it, which is much less talked about when we talk about climate change.